Hi everyone. I want to talk about the 80s today. If you're if you are from that time or a child of the 70s like I am, I want to talk about give you the reasons why I believe the 80s was probably one of the best times to be alive, to live, to experience this life here on this earth. And I believe that the reason why it was so good. I mean, I'm going to talk about it, but stick around. Even if you're not from the 80s or from before that, I think you're going to like what I have to say. And you're probably going to agree with a lot of the things that I'm going to mention here. The 80s were a special time in human history. A lot of stuff changed around that time. Many things happened, right? But I mean, let's be real about what was good about it. Well, we had a good amount of technology, but not overwhelmingly so like it is today, that people kind of like lost their humanity in a way. Go watch that video that I posted about losing touch with our own humanity if you want to know more about that. The 80s were great. We had some of the best music ever made to this day, right? This is undeniable, undisputable. Hollywood produced some of the best movies that have ever been made at that time. It's a lot different today, I can tell you that much. Back then they didn't make movies with like all these like political ideology, gender war ideology, any of that stuff. Yes, there was some of it already there, but it was very subtle, and it wasn't the way it is today, where it's like there is clearly a message being, given, being forced upon people's minds, so to speak, right? The 80s were great. So what happens is people were still very human, in the sense that connections were still a very real thing. People understood, how valuable and important that is in our lives personally, right? But what happened is, as the technology began to rapidly get better, then things took a turn for the worse. And then everything changed. And it changed, and that happened, somewhere between the late 90s and right around before 2010ish or so. That's when things really, really took a turn and everything changed. And now we're in 2026, and it's so much different than it was back then, especially in the 80s. The 80s, like I said, the 80s were great. What I missed the most about that time was that, I was a teenager back then. People still had friends, real friendships, things that they held on to. If you were a guy and you liked a girl, or vice versa, you know, you would approach that person physically, in person, because obviously you knew them somehow. You would gather the courage, whatever you needed to get to them and let them know how you felt about it, whatever. There were all these things like that people still did and still knew how to do, because that's just how the world worked back then. There was none of this social media cancer that exists today. And yeah, that's what I'm calling it, because that's what I feel it is for the most part, because it's affecting everyone in that way. That people have forgotten how important it is to connect with one another on a personal level, because this is what makes us human after all. I think the reason why there are so many problems and issues with humanity today is because of the real disconnect that exists right now within the whole and just about everyone, generally speaking, right? There's always going to be exceptions to that rule. There's always going to be people who still understand what matters in life and what's important. There's always going to be people who are not going to fall for these things, but those are few and far between. Those are the rare, the few. The ones that may think that they're special somehow because they might have heard somebody over here tell them so. But you don't need someone to tell you that. You should already know. And the other thing is, everyone is special in their own way. There's no such thing as you're different in such a manner that you matter more than other people. That doesn't exist. We're all the same here. I've said this many, many times before. We're all equal. It's just that there will be some of us that have more wisdom than others because of their life experiences and the things that they went through. That's really all that there is to it. When you go through enough things in life, you're going to learn a lot. And you're going to become a so much better person for that. And that's an undeniable fact. So if you have an easy life where you don't have to work for anything, you don't have to put an effort for anything, you don't have to do anything, everything just falls on your lap, you're never going to know or understand so many things. Because when you don't experience certain types of adversity in your life, you won't learn. And if you don't learn, you don't grow. You don't expand. You don't become a better version of yourself. That version that understands that you wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for the things that happened to you along the way. So the 80's were great in that sense, because although there was technology and there were all these other great things about it, you know, the music, the movies, the culture, so many different things, people still got to keep their own individuality, so to speak. Back then, that's how it was. And also, people were still capable of having their own opinions, thinking for themselves, express themselves in a much more freer way than it is done today. And people didn't fear the repercussions, what someone might think when you voiced your opinions about whatever it was back then. Nobody cared. Everybody was cool with it. We could disagree on things, but we wouldn't hate each other for it. We just had different opinions. That's how it was. And everybody was cool with it. Everybody was fine with it. It was such a beautiful thing. And that's all gone now. It's all lost. It's all in the dirt. It really is. Because now people don't even voice their own opinions anymore. They don't say what they think out of fear of whatever others may think, however others may see you because of an opinion that you have on something. I've said this before. I think I even have a video with a title like that. People the whole world has become so polarized these days. Everything is polarized. Everything is extreme. It's either on one side of the spectrum or the other. There's no middle ground anymore. There's no balance, no alignment. It's one side or the other side. And God forbid if you have an opinion and you stand by it. You don't apologize for what you said because it may hurt somebody. But the truth is, at sometimes, many times actually, the truth hurts, doesn't it? And if something somebody says will trigger you in a way, you should really take a very deep look within yourself to figure out why did that trigger you. Because chances are there's something there to be looked on. There's something there to be worked on. There's definitely something there. I can guarantee you that. And so I think that's really the biggest difference between the 80s and how the world is today. Is that things were very similar in this sense that there was already technology out there, all kinds of technology actually, nothing like what we have today, obviously, because we've rapidly expanded and improved on that over the span of a couple of decades. It's insane the amount of technology that has been developed in recent times, and the things that are still being discovered and the things that are still yet to be discovered, created, invented. And all of these things have value, in my opinion. Even AI, all of it has value. But we have to know how to fine-tune these tools that we have developed for our own betterment and for even the future of mankind, generally speaking, right? We have to know how to use these things in a healthy way and not allow some of these things that are being done now and created to become distorted and to become a danger to ourselves in our own future. And there's also a lot of hype behind certain things that shouldn't be the way it is. I don't know why it is the way it is, because people still don't understand. I talked about this before when it comes down to the AI, right? That these are just large language models. That's all that they are. They're just coding. They're just software. And they are terrible at certain things, and they really excel at other things. And that's what people have to understand. AI is full of flaws, but it's also full of wonders. So just know and understand that. And never rely on things like this for your own decision making and what you expect from yourself and what you're going to do for yourself. That comes from you and nobody else. That comes from within and nobody else. Those answers that you've always you've always been looking for, all of these things, that's all within you, not AI or anything else outside of you for that matter. So, the biggest thing about the 80s, I think it was that people still got to be much more freer than they are today, in the sense that they understood and they valued the personal connections that existed in their lives. Real connections with other real human beings. Not this thing right here that I'm doing that a lot of people do. And I'm not saying that you can't connect with someone like this, obviously. And this is why there's a lot of people on this platform capitalizing on it and telling you all the things that you want to hear so that you can keep coming back for more. But you shouldn't have to keep coming back for more. If you were doing what you had to do for yourself this whole time. See, this is the biggest problem. It's we're always looking for answers outside of us. We're always looking for guidance outside of us. We're always waiting for somebody else to tell us what to do, where to go, how to do things. And you know why that is, though? It's because we were conditioned to be this way. We were trained, educated. Force fed into our minds over and over and over again, over many, many years, to see ourselves that way, to think about ourselves that way, and to always have these thoughts and feelings that we need to get something from outside of ourselves. To be able to make the right choices or do the right things and everything that's related to that. When that's never been the case, that's never going to be the case, and that is never going to change, no matter what you think or what you believe. I said this many, many times before. Doesn't matter what we think or what we believe. The universe has its own set of rules and regulations. The universe has its own operating system. And it will always work the way it does. Like a fine-tuned Swiss clock. It'll never change. It'll never skip a beat. Yeah, this may sound funny, but it's true. That's just the universe. It does not need our permission to do its own thing and to continue the flow of its own operating system. The flow of life, the flow of creation, the flow of this experience here that we call life. The learning, the growing, and all of that entails all of it. So yeah, I really wanted to talk about the whole thing with the 80s because I think it's fascinating. And if you've been around during that time, I'm sure you've had many instances in your life where you look back. Maybe you talk to your kids about it. I know I've done many times, the 80s were the greatest time in modern times, in the modern era of humanity, I would say. There have been great times in other times as well before that, but I think when it comes down to the modern world, the 80s were really the best that there was. And we're gonna remember many of those things for generations to come. I bet many things are gonna be spoken off about it in the future when we're all gone from this place, right? Because there were many great things about it. But then, like I said, as the technology gotten better and evolved rapidly, then everything shifted, everything changed, and then it's like people dehumanized so fast. It's a scary thing. And now everybody turns to these devices to search for answers, to search for purpose, to search for meaning, to search for validation, to feel liked, whatever that is. That's what everybody's doing. I don't know why though, but it's just the way it is now, right? So I'm gonna leave this one at this, my friends. Remember the 80s, because they were great. And if you like the channel, don't forget to leave a like, share, and subscribe. It helps the channel grow and reach more people. That's why I do what I do here. Until next time, my friends, take care, be safe. I love you all.